Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Patrick Tucker, Science and Technology Editor at Defense One, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the start of our 8th annual Defense One Technology Summit. Today will be virtual, tomorrow will be in person at the Reagan Building in downtown DC. Really hope to see you there. We have a very exciting program ahead, including interviews with Air Force Research Laboratories Chief Technology Officer, Dr. Tim Bunning, Lieutenant General Alexis Grinkwich, Commander for U.S. Air Force's Central Command, Brave One from Ukraine, a innovative new Ministry of Defense outfit out of the Ukrainian military to connect innovators to battlefield operators at the speed of conflict, and the most important conflict of since World War II. And that's just a small sampling of what we have going on. Please check the schedule and the agenda. Before we get started, a couple of quick housekeeping items. To the right of your screen, you will find the chat box. This is where you can ask for technical assistance, send questions to our speakers that are live, as well as chat and interact with your fellow attendees. Also, as a reminder, this event is being recorded and will be available on demand shortly for you to share with your colleagues. So to kick off today's programming, I'm excited to welcome Dr. Timothy Bunning, the Chief Technology Officer at the Air Force Research Lab. Can I call you Tim?
Please.
Okay, Tim, thank you so much for being on today. So real quick, can you give us a quick sense of who you are, what you do, and why it's so important to the country?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I'm the CTO of AFRL. I like to joke, I do whatever my boss, the two-star, wants me to do. But I would say at the 100,000-foot level, I'm the senior S&T advisor to the commander of AFRL. AFRL is a very big place. 10 locations here in the U.S., 6 international sites. We execute a large fraction of the Air Force's S&T budget. And so I sit in the front office with her and the senior executive for personnel, and do all things that are needed to help AFRL do its mission in the future, which is really to lead, discover, develop, transition technology for the fight today, for the fight tomorrow, as well as the fight in the future.
Okay. Well, great. Well, let's just jump right into it, because your portfolio is so vast and so hard. We're talking about some of the most challenging aspects of science and technology that anyone in the world is researching right now, and you're at the forefront of that. So it's pretty exciting. Give us a sense of kind of it seems to me like your hardest area, which is the development of hypersonic missiles, and this is an area where the United States had a lead for a little while in the 2000s, and then didn't have a lead. I think it's fair to say you see China and Russia both deploying new sets of hypersonic missiles. These are missiles that are highly maneuverable, travel at 5 times the speed of sound, and they're able to kind of evade a lot of conventional air defenses. And the US is now in a phase where it's trying to catching up. It has different parameters for its hypersonic missile program. But give us a sense right now of what the research looks like in terms of bringing hypersonic missiles over the finish line, in terms of where you see the hardest challenge.
Yeah, it's a great question. As you mentioned, there's been a on and off love affair with hypersonics through the last couple decades. I would say AFRL behind the scenes has been investing all along, trying to ride those waves. Our major focus is air to air, as you might imagine. Some air to ground. That's where our primary focus is. We are strongly coupled with where the department is going. My Hypersonics ST, James Weber, just took over the OSD position for the principal director for hypersonics at the OSD level, and so we're I would say strongly coupled into where we need to go. I would say there are 3 major areas that AFRL plays. One is in the materials world. You need novel materials to operate in those extreme environments. The aero packaging of such systems is so important. Moving that fast, you have to be able to understand, how things move and react to slight perturbations. And then the third piece is the bang piece, the weapon piece. And so we have a very strong cross TD team, technical directorate team. AFRL is built on technology directorates, if you will. And so we have a community of practice in the hypersonics world, really focused on trying to pull those three pieces together and working together. We have integrated roadmaps. Those integrated roadmaps are connected to the OSD lines of effort. So we know where their swim lanes are and where our swim lanes aren't. Probably have about 300 of our S&Ts working on some version, some aspect of hypersonics. So out of a 6,000 person workforce, that's a fairly large chunk of investment. And so we're, from a transition point of view, we're doing a lot with DARPA, working on programs like Hawk and TBG. And so we try to allow the higher TRL level test flight, et cetera, activities. They're expensive. We try to do it in conjunction with people like DARPA. It's been a great relationship through the years. Big challenges, I think, as we continue to mature this area are in the testing arenas. To be able to test, you need lots of space, and that brings to bear problems that are not necessarily there. So we're tackling that with two ways. One is trying to do more in silico. So, using modeling, sim, and analysis to try to help us decrease those amount of tests, as well as trying to do a lot more with our international partners in this area, particularly Australia, that's got some, has some ranges that, we find very, very appealing.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, folks over at DARPA would talk about how the ranging issue and just the fact that the US didn't have the ranges that it kind of wished that it has. I think they were working out of like NASA Ames and they had like one wind tunnel or something, was kind of a big challenge in terms of moving hypersonic weapons to deployment. With the partnership with Australia, some of the work you can do in terms of virtual simulation for things, do you feel like you've solved that range issue, or is more ranging still necessary at this point to really bring these things into reality?
Yeah, it is not solved. We had a recent scientific advisory board examination of our hypersonics program, and that they came back and said that's the number one threat right now to the portfolio. So the two areas I mentioned are helping, but we don't have what we need to maybe operate at a speed of relevance right now. And quite honestly, we're, as we do, and there's been some high profile public discussions about some of the tests that we've done. I mean, we're really exercising muscles that we haven't exercised in a while. And, I think we have to be tolerant that, these are complex systems and things go wrong, and we have to be tolerant of that failure. We certainly know the other side is doing lots of tests and they fail all the time, and maybe don't have the political pressure, public pressure, negative pressure that comes along with the test. And so, we're trying to stay true to, our role is to look forward, provide technologies that we know will have effect, that will shape the fight, and clearly range and speed are big drivers for the portfolio right now. And so, we're continuing to, push the hypersonics technology where needed.
Yeah, well, let me stick on that for a second, because I think that touches on something that's really kind of fundamental to where the department as a whole is trying to move, and lawmakers are making sounds as though they support that, and that is that willingness to support more experimentation and adopt a kind of fail more, try more, fail fast and cheap kind of mentality, the kind that characterizes much of what we associate with technology development out of Silicon Valley. But you can fail pretty fast and cheap when you're inventing a dating app. When you're trying to create a hypersonic cruise missile, there's a hard limit in terms of how cheap that failure is going to be. Do you feel like and that is something that has gotten in the way of consistent budgetary support for some of these ambitious things, I think, over the last couple of decades. Do you feel like lawmakers and Congress in particular now have a better understanding of the need to continually experiment, to try new programs, and to fail in pursuit of new scientific breakthroughs? Do you think that they're finally beginning to understand that?
I do. I think there's a recognition, that we're coming out of a Cold War mentality era where we could do what we wanted, permissive environments, etc. And the projected threats are not that, and therefore we need to change the kit that we have, and it's going to take some evolvement of the concepts, evolvement of the technologies, and with that comes the need to do things with a risk posture, I'll put it that way, that's maybe a little bit different than what we had say 10 years ago. So our interactions with Congress have been very, very positive. So I would say the answer to that question is yes.
Okay, that's great. And some of the effects of that willingness on the part of lawmakers and really the entire enterprise to accept a little bit more risk is evident in some of the Vanguard efforts that you guys are transitioning. And there's a lot of them, but can you give me a sense of what are the ones that you're transitioning the most important to you right now, the ones that you feel like really speak to the ability to bring breakthrough science and technology to current challenges in the broader great state competition era?
Yeah, I mean, a great question. We love the Vanguards. This is all about trying to do things slightly differently, trying to pull together teams that are capability focused, focused on future things that will change the fight. Do it with the acquisition system versus the old model, which was we would get something to a chair level 6 and then go find someone that wanted to bring it into a program of record. So do it in conjunction. We have 4 Vanguards going on right now. All are successful. Skyborg is dealing with collaborative combat aircraft. To the mass comment I made earlier, we're going to need mass in the air of both weapons and platforms to drive complexity to a future fight, as well as minimize risk to the most important asset we have, which is the human. That's been a phenomenal interaction with the PEO for advanced fighters and advanced aircraft. It is being transitioned to a program of record. Our focus has been on the brain versus the platform, and I think that's where the long pole in the tent was at the time, and been truly a marriage of classic acquisition world with pushing S&T faster. Golden Horde, all about network centered weapons, if you will. Think of launching a suite of 5 or 10 weapons, maybe originally pre-programmed, but an audible is called because of the complexity, and they themselves decide what they're going to do differently. So how do you build that trust? How do you build the smarts? How do you enable such things? That's being transitioned to our program office, the weapons PEO. Great success. NTS-3 is our first on-orbit full experimentation satellites. Think of a satellite where we don't need to move the satellite, but because of the digital capabilities we have on there with the radars, et cetera, that you can point where you need to communicate. So move the lightning bolts around versus move the platform to move the lightning bolts. Again, fully successful. And then maybe one that's probably a little more exemplar of what we're really trying to do with the Vanguards is something called rocket cargo.
Mhm.
You know, and that's really about how do we leverage commercial, where the commercial world's going to maybe just completely transform how we do logistics within the Air Force. So right now, logistics is everything. I mean,
Right.
and if you can, and that's done with Transcom, that's done with flying lots of plane. You know, think you know, FedEx, and you know, it's a complex, time-consuming, very expensive process to move things around this globe. Think if you could move, you know, 100 tons in 2 hours anywhere on the globe, what that would do to change fundamentally how you would prosecute a war, how you would prosecute a conflict, how your training and tactics and procedures would just fundamentally change. That is what rocket cargo is about. And I can tell you, in some circles, when you talk about it, you know, people that have been versed in doing it a certain way, they question it, right? Because it's gonna, if it succeeds, which is a big if, it will change fundamentally how we do that part. And that's really the vision of what a Vanguard is to conceive of something that we've done the analysis that shows it can be done.
Yeah.
But if we can make it come to fruition with a willing partner that's willing to put it into the POM budget, to get it into the acquisition system, it will change our system. And, you know, with that comes a lot of pushback in some circles, right? Because, you know, we're a big organization. I always use a Navy term. We're a very big ship with a very small rudder. You know, and sometimes it's hard to change those. Well, we've been doing it this way for, you know, 40 years. That's how we've always moved stuff.
Yeah.
So that's really the essence of what a Vanguard is. So the 3 of the 4 are transitioning. We'll see what rocket cargo does, but you know, just phenomenal progress so far on it. The thing I like as the CTO of AFRL, I'm always trying to get my alpha nerds, if you will, working better together that sit within these technical directorates. And when you listen to the lines of effort, the teams that represent the lines of effort on rocket cargo, they come in once a month, I get a brief. Those cross TD teams of alpha nerds, they're just so excited. They are just loving working together. And that's the culture we need to perpetuate going forward out of the lab is how do you build highly functioning, multidisciplinary teams, bring people together who speak different technical languages, pull them together to work on something that's going to change the fight. And that's really the beauty of the rocket cargo.
Well, so let me stick with that for a second, because what you're describing is an absolutely like world-changing technology that would create new business enterprises that, you know, Amazon would have to completely change the way it does or face peril, and there would be, I mean, it would basically change life on this planet if it were broadly available, commercialized, and certainly change military ConOps, as you said. You can imagine what the war in Ukraine looked like if we were able to get HIMARS and 155 rounds into Europe and then into Ukraine at that pace. You would have a completely different set of headlines, you know, across the world right now. When you say that it's experienced tremendous progress so far, when these alpha nerds come in and tell you what they've seen, what does progress on that look like at this moment? And what is the timeline for knowing, wow, we really got something here, this is something that could transition, or this was a fruitful experimentation effort, but maybe not fully there yet? What does success look like now, and what is it going to look like for you in a few years on that particular project?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, I would say we have another couple of years to get to a go, no go decision point when it comes to working with Transcom and quite honestly, the Space Force. I mean, think about it. Who owns it? Is it the air or the space side? And you know, again, another conflict we have to work through. What we're doing is we've broken the problem down into technical components, and we're really trying to do proof of concept experimentation, both real world as well as in the computer, to show that, you know, a vehicle flying at this speed, we know we can throw out a big cargo pack out the back of a C-130 flying at 10,000 feet with a parachute and it drops.
Right.
Well, can I drop something out of a rocket that's traveling Mach, 5, something that's a heck of a lot bigger, 100 tons? Can I drop something out of that? I mean, so it's those fundamental aero questions that we have never really had to answer before, as an example. Or given the size of these things, working with commercial space, do we need to worry about the landing pad issues? And how would we go about reconstituting a landing pad that had the right performance specs on a short period of time? Is there new technology to do that? So there's a whole long, I think there's like 7 or 8 lines of effort. They escape me right now, but
Yeah.
essentially what the teams are trying to do is, ask the what if questions. Can this be done? With quantitative measures, and as the teams come together, at some point we'll assess, well, it was an experiment worthy of the experiment, and it probably won't work, or it'll go on. But to me, it's the sort of forward-looking, high risk, high payoff activity that a service lab should be focused on.
Yeah.
Because we can couple, again, alpha nerds with alpha operators because of where we live in the ecosystem. And the magic happens at that interface of those people.
Yeah, that would be tremendously exciting when you find out whether or not you've got something that's going to revolutionize logistics around the world at some point, but certainly for the U.S. military first. Let's get into artificial intelligence a little bit, because this seems like there's obviously a ton of headlines on it now because people are accessing it via new publicly available platforms that are super fun, not exactly reliable on the public side, but certainly amusing and I think in many ways actually quite useful. But the U.S. military has been working with artificial intelligence in different ways for a very long time. And it strikes me that through different categories of that, virtual twinning, simulation, but also the need to embed autonomy and collaborative autonomy in the platforms that you're making. You're working with AI in all these different ways. So yeah, that would be my first question. How are some new ways that you are working with artificial intelligence, and how is it at this point beginning to change the way you think through some of these problems and create potentially new capabilities for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a lot to unpack there. Twinning versus AI. We're doing a lot of work in a lot of areas. A couple things come to mind, and just so you know, I'll throw this story out there. I think we all need to be a little concerned. My daughter got married a month ago, and I threatened her that I wasn't going to do a father of the bride speech. So I did one from the heart, but I also went out to Chat GPT and I gave it 3 words, 3 key words. And literally in, a 10th of a second, it spit out this gorgeous father of the bride speech, right? Which, so I think we got to be concerned as an enterprise of people using, those sorts of engines to convince us that they have more knowledge than they do. So I think there's a whole side of regulation, et cetera, that we're going to have to worry about, given that we're supposed to be an honest broker. We're supposed to be working with industry to ensure, technical rigor, et cetera. That aside, obviously we're doing a lot of AI with regard to, I mentioned it, Skyborg, the net-centric weapons, using the, building the right set of tools to help us make decisions on a time scale that's quick enough to be able to help drive the con ops needed in some of these new platforms. on the digital twinning piece, I mean, AFRL is undergoing a digital revolution, if you will. It's been one of my bosses, or previous boss. Um, One of our major goals is to, digital transform
Mhm.
the lab, transform digital dinosaurs to digital ninjas, if you will. And we have so much activity going on in that area. But to the twinning piece, I think it's very, very important. I think so much can be done given the fidelity of the physics-based codes up to platform arrow. So much can be done in the computer these days before you have to go and start bending metal. And I think that's evident in a number of the official programs that are out there. T7 comes to mind, B21, et cetera. And it's already shown it's worth that. You get the codes right, you can run millions of simulations, and again, reduce risk in areas based on those simulations before you actually go and what I call bend metal. I'm a materials guy, so and so I would say we're trying to do that across the board in AFRL. We're trying to use AI to help us on our business practices. We're trying to use AI to push the state of the art when it comes to high fidelity physics-based modeling of phenomena. We're trying to, in the more platform-centric focus, we're trying to, build platforms within the digital realm, to look at option space. And so it's there, and we're trying to I would say ride the wave just like everyone else is.
Yeah. So on this autonomy piece, because there's AFRL has done some really interesting work on obviously autonomous flight, and we see now there's this huge call, for instance, in Ukraine to get F-16s and older platforms out to Ukraine. And that's not your decision; it's someone else's decision. But part of the reason for that is because there's this perception that some of these older aircraft, because they're not fifth gen, don't have the value of a modern aircraft. Do you feel like you're at the point where you can create new capability in some of these older platforms through autonomy and creating kind of a agnostic software that can be exported onto a wider variety of platforms to create new combinations of lethality? Where do you think you are on that? Is that part of the vision of what you want to do with autonomy?
It is. There's a program called Project Venom, which is just that, taking came out of DARPA. We're strongly coupled with it. It's taking an existing platform and removing the pilot and putting in an autonomous pilot, if you will, but that's much more than just an autopilot.
Right.
So we're working that side of it as well. But I think the new platform piece is also of interest because of the affordability aspects of it. You can, with modern day manufacturing tools, additive manufacturing, the ability to build much cheaper, smaller, lighter weight unmanned systems affords the opportunity to change the cost calculus, if you will, of a potential future fight. So I would say we're doing both. So we're working both sides of it. But I clearly think on the former side, you'll use existing platforms that we're used to and make them autonomous. I think there's a lot of room to grow there, particularly as it's going to come down to trust, right? I mean,
right.
If I'm flying my bird and I got 3 unmanned birds flying around me, I want to have trust in those three birds. And I think there's a whole lot we can do. I know a lot of people like the new shiny platform, because that's what the Air Force does, right? Build new platforms. There's a lot we can do from the ConOps, from the TTPs, from the learning piece of it, by taking existing platforms that we have and making them, AI autonomous capable, just to start to generationally change the trust that we're going to need in the pilots that we're projecting are going to have to, operate in this environment.
Right, right. So I think that's a really good point. And in the little time that we have left, I'd like to ask you a little bit about what some of that partnering with actual pilots and operators looks like for you, and as well as accelerating adoption of new ideas that come from the ground up within AFRL. You have this effort called Seeding. Tell us a little bit about what that is, because that sounds like something that's very much in line with the broader new agenda at the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Development, and really the whole Pentagon, to make sure that we're actually bolstering ideas that come from within organizations and accelerating that relationship between operators and innovators so that you get to solutions that are relevant to those operators much faster. What is going on with the seeding program? And do you have any big victories or efforts that have come out of that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, you're speaking my language now, because this is a program I run, and just a clarification, it's a Seedlings program.
Seedlings, yes.
Seedlings for Disruptive Capability Programs. We call it SDCP.
Yeah.
It was born of the same mindset that our war tech process, which led to the Vanguards that we talked about earlier, came from. Is how do you work on next generation capability that will potentially change the fight? So within this larger war tech bucket, there's really two pieces. There's a larger 6.3 higher TRL level activity, i.e. the Vanguard prospects. But as part of this, we recognize that we have some phenomenally talented people within the lab. They connect every day to the warfighter. And so we needed an avenue for them to be able to conceive of and go after activities where they could invent the future, if you will. And so we built this Seedlings for Disruptive Capability program coming out of the 2030 S&T strategy. And to an earlier point, it's really meant to drive cross-technical directorate activities amongst my alpha nerds. We really want them working together, again, not working on this component or that component, but working on a capability, but that's forward-looking. So we've done 4 rounds of the Seedlings. We started them 3 years ago. We just awarded the next 3. There's about a dozen of them. The first tranche of them are just ending now. So it's been 3 years. These are up to 3-year programs, up to $5 million a year. So roughly a $15 million program. And it's really meant to pull groups of people within the lab together, but then go partner with industry and academia, build the team you need to build to get after this. Don't be constrained by it's got to be in, it's got to be out, but build a coordinated team to get after it. We've had a number of successes out of the first tranche. A couple I can't talk about because they've been so successful, they're going elsewhere. One I'll just mention, called Mutant. So we typically drive our missiles like a old car, rear wheel drive. Think about if I had front wheel drive on a missile, i.e. I could morph the nose, I could change the nose versus changing the tail fin.
Right.
So we launched a program 3 years ago called Mutant. And it's really about, can we do this? Does it make sense? Do the ops analysis. And in 3 years, they've done some phenomenal work, which they've now leveraged into lots of other money, OSD money, et cetera. So, if you look at the amplifying effect that it's had, I mean, we're not there yet, but in terms of showed it was possible, yes. Built a team from 3 of my directorates that are still working together, yes. Gotten visibility at the highest levels of OSD, yes. Leveraging OSD money to go work on it, yes. So that's the essence of what the Seedling programs are, is to I don't like the term bottoms up, because nothing is bottoms up, because my scientists and engineers are mission driven. They're fully connected with the warfighter. But it's really about, instead of, the building or our futures or someone telling us what the crystal ball is let people who can define what the state of the art technically is, with where if we could do this, how it would change this operation, and let them come together. And so the teams that do the review are not an internal team exclusively. So I've made a very conscious effort to, the review teams are, the MAGCOMs, COCOMs, their chief scientists are all part of this. So we're picking things that are of interest to the operational warfighter. And then each seedling has an advisory board that report to me, and it's co-chaired, and I want it to be co-chaired. So there's a technical chair and there's an operational chair, and then there's people underneath. And each seedling meets twice a year with this group. They send me a report, twice a year on all of them. And so, it's a little bit of, some will be successful, like the mutant one. Some will, I would say, mature things, components of things that we hope get picked up within the laboratory as part of the core program, because there's promise there. And some probably will fail because it was too big of an experiment, or it wasn't ready for its time. And all three are okay. That's what the lab is here to do, right? We do research. So
excellent. Well, that's front wheel drive for missiles is world changing stuff. I've never heard that before, and so it's been an absolute pleasure. This is all the time that we have, unfortunately, for this. But I feel like we could keep talking, and you tell me another thing that was within the realm of physical possibility that I'd never considered before. Yeah. So you have a pretty awesome job, and it sounds like you're having a lot of fun with it and having a huge impact too. So thank you, Tim, for talking with us today. Thank you also to AFRL. To our audience, please stick around. A lot more programming coming on today, so don't go anywhere. But in the meantime, thanks, Tim. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay.